Good afternoon, everybody. This is Don again, and it is time for episode 64 of Practical Reality. It's a Saturday afternoon. I think it's, between 3 and 3:30. It's pretty hot out. Although right now the sky is kind of hazy and the sun is kind of shaded, but it's pretty hot. It's got to be probably 90 or 91 degrees. We're having a heat wave in New Jersey, and I think tomorrow will be the last day, and I'm going to the beach. Tomorrow is definitely going to be a beach day. So, last night happened to be one of those nights where I couldn't find a whole lot on TV, but then I came across something that I had actually seen before, but I had never really watched very closely. PBS was doing a documentary on the making of the Woodstock Festival. In other words, the organization behind the scenes of how the Woodstock Festival came together back in 1969. And when you hear this about the circumstances and the obstacles they faced, you realize that what actually happened there is a minor miracle. The organizers of the festival first talk about all the logistical aspects, the organizational aspects of getting the whole festival together. And they sort of move through that part pretty quickly. But what's really fascinating is the actual events that occurred on that weekend in 1969 and how everything could have gone really badly, but it turned out to be fantastic. Initially, they thought there might be about 50,000 people there. Now, I don't think anyone knows the true number, but the estimates have ranged between 350 and 500,000 people. When they show the overhead shots of the festival, you can see it's literally a sea of people that seems to stretch endlessly. And they were all sitting together on a field on the farm of a man named Max Yasgur in upstate New York, in actually a town called Bethel. So let's talk about the problems they ran into one after the other and how they handled it and why it's so important to discuss this. The first problem they had was collecting money from the people who had bought the tickets. As I said, they expected 50,000 people, but the people who showed up were way, way more than 50,000 people. So the first problem they had was they didn't really have one central place to let the people in. The field was accessible from a number of places, and they put up fences. But what happened was the people just walked over the fences and knocked them down and went to take their seats. So they didn't have any way to collect money from the people who bought the tickets. And then, of course, there were thousands and thousands of more people, many more people who didn't buy tickets than who did. So they finally decided, after a pretty short period of time, to just let it happen that way. They declared from the stage that this is now a free concert. They knew they were going to take a tremendous financial bath, but to them, the music was more important than collecting the money. The second problem became getting the musicians to the actual festival itself. The traffic was so bad that cars were backed up for miles coming into the area, the town of Bethel, the area around the farm itself. So what that meant was the musicians who were staying in hotels nearby had no way to get to the festival. They couldn't possibly walk with all of their instruments and amps and that kind of stuff. So what the organizers of the festival finally did was to rent some helicopters. And that's how the musicians, the performers, finally got to the festival, airlifted in like one band or two bands at a time. The next problem they had was they had basically a city of 400,000 people. And what's going to happen? Some people get sick. It was hot. It was a hot weekend. It was a hot day just like today. People got sick. They actually showed a list of all the illnesses they encountered. And one of them, of course, was the fact that some people overdosed on LSD at the festival. So what they did was set up a series of tents on the edge of the farm that they called freak-out tents. And they let people go there and sit there and calm down and come down from the freak-out they were having on the LSD. And as those people came down, other people streamed in, and then those people who had just been sitting there trying to calm down helped other people calm down. So there was a spirit of cooperation there. But no one died at all. No one. There were no deaths at the festival whatsoever. The next problem they had was running out of food. They had planned for 50,000 people. And when you have 7 or 8 times that many people show up, you don't have enough food. There's no question about it. But here's where the townspeople came to the rescue. Now, prior to the festival, there had been a lot of pushback in the town about this festival happening in their town. They had been told lies. They had been told that the kids who were coming would cause chaos, and there would be violence, and there would be a lot of other problems associated with having these kids in their town. But the exact opposite happened. These kids came, and all they wanted to do was listen to music. So they all came, and they were all there, and they were all peaceful, and there was no violence whatsoever. So when the townspeople found out that the festival was running out of food, the townspeople and the people who run the grocery stores went into their freezers and their refrigerators and donated food to the festival. They fed those kids for the next 3 days. It's a minor miracle. The townspeople donated the food, then they came to the festival and helped prepare the food and served it along with other kids who had volunteered to help feed the multitude of people that were there. And of course, the most famous line from Woodstock concerns the way that they overcame this problem. You had a man who's, I'm not sure, I guess this was not his real name, but his name at the festival was Wavy Gravy. And he was a total hippie, and he was actually put in charge of security, which is a complete joke. But he stood on that stage on Sunday morning after the music had been playing all night long, and they had had a thunderstorm the day before. And he stood on that stage on Sunday morning and said, "What we have in mind is breakfast in bed for 400,000. And they made it happen. And as I said, they had a thunderstorm on Saturday afternoon. The rain moved in, and they showed the footage of the people hunkering down. Some of them had tarps. Some of them had, ponchos, jackets, this kind of stuff. Some of them had nothing. Some of them just sat there and got rained on as long as it took. And they showed them scrambling around the stage to secure all the equipment on the stage from getting soaking wet and electrocuting all the people that were standing within like 50 feet of the stage. So they made that happen as well. No one panicked. And after the rain stopped, what they showed was there were kids who basically made a slide out of the mud, just like all of us did when we were kids. You run along, you slip in the mud and slide your butt into the mud and slide as far as you can until you hit somebody. And then someone slides in behind you and runs into you. And that's what they did to entertain the crowd around them. And the music went on. Whoever got to the festival first was who went on first. It just happened to be that most of the people who got to the festival first on the first day were folk singers, people like Richie Havens and Joan Baez. So they went on first. There was supposed to be an order that all of the musicians were supposed to follow, but that got thrown out the window because of the incredible traffic and the logistical nightmare that it created. So whoever got on that helicopter and got to the festival first was who went on first. And then they played all night long. The Jefferson Airplane went on at 6:30 in the morning. All of those performances were raw and real. The spirit of the music is what mattered, and they fed off the energy of that crowd. And in the middle of the day, I believe it was on Saturday, I'm not sure if it was Saturday or Sunday, but they brought on Max Yasker, the owner of the farm, who had rented his field so the festival could take place. And he congratulated those kids for being the example of peace, love, and music that was the purpose of the festival in the first place. This man, who was in his 50s and was definitely would identify himself as a conservative man, could not refute the fact that these kids had come to his field and had a beautiful, wonderful time and cooperated with each other to make sure that there was no violence whatsoever. And finally, on Monday morning, after everything was supposed to be over, Jimi Hendrix went on stage and played the national anthem in a way that no one before or since has ever played it. The people who were still there, described it as a mesmerizing sound, something they could not take their eyes off of. And then it was over, and they showed the field with everything that was left behind, the garbage and the sleeping bags and the ponchos and the plastic. And an army of volunteers came forward to clean up the field. And then the last thing they showed was an image of what that field looks like today. A simple green field, beautiful rolling hills that you would never guess once held 400,000 people. So why am I telling you this? Because think about what would happen. What would happen today if they tried to put on a festival like that? We know that there have been successors to Woodstock, at least in 1994 and 1999. And what happened? Both of them didn't turn out nearly as well as the one in 1969, and there were problems at both of them. And why? The simple reason is because the money became more important than the music. And when that happens, trouble ensues. And the festival, in the later Woodstock festivals, were not being held to celebrate peace, love, and music. The more recent festivals were held, it seems, to unleash anger and frustration. Think about what would happen at those festivals if they ran out of food, if people were getting sick and the concert goers started trampling the fences. It would have been chaos. It would have been mayhem. It would have been a complete disaster, because that spirit of cooperation and peace and love is gone in America. It no longer exists. It has been relegated to a quaint place in history. And that is a shame, because America demonstrated its greatness on that weekend in 1969, and the spirit of that greatness has been completely forgotten. And on that weekend in 1969, that spirit of love and peace and cooperation showed itself. And that peace and love and cooperation should have been sustained from that moment on. But as time marches on, and as we watch history repeat itself, that love and cooperation has become belittled as a personality trait of the weak. And as money becomes concentrated in fewer and fewer hands, the worship of wealth has become the prevalent mental illness. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you can help someone, think about those 400,000 kids who pulled off a minor miracle in a field in upstate New York in 1969, and remember their spirit of selflessness and cooperation, and let that be your inspiration when you see someone who could use a helping hand. Thank you for listening to this video today. I welcome feedback, I welcome comments, and of course, I welcome more subscribers. And I wish you peace, happiness, and prosperity in the same spirit that those kids practice in that field on that weekend in August in 1969.